Hello, thank you for joining the meeting. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to this meeting and learn about the funding options we have for your community. The city has been working with CivicMic to educate your community about the landscape and lighting districts. Our primary goal is to provide information so you can make an informed decision about the services that are being provided to your community and the associated funding. We will cover the history of the district and loan option details in this meeting, as well as an introduction to the surveys and ways that you can get involved in your community. This meeting is recorded and shared on civicmic.com, which is where you have likely found us. And there's a lot of other useful information here about your district. So please look around, learn more about the district. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us at 1-800-676-7516 before taking the survey. With that, we will move into the presentation with a history of the district and loan option details by Chris Lewis from the city.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lewis. I'm with the Public Works Department. I've been with the department since early 2020 and began really overseeing the districts in early 2021. Over the last year and a half or so, I've spent a lot of time learning the history and operations of the city's 16 landscaping and lighting maintenance districts. And I think I came at a really pivotal time because we do have an opportunity to make some really big changes and decisions in these districts, and I look forward to it. So we do have a lot of information to cover, so I apologize in advance if I'm speaking a little quickly, but feel free to ask questions at the end. Email us, as Danielle mentioned. There's several ways you can contact us, but please don't hesitate to reach out because we definitely want to get your questions answered. Next slide, please. And this is just a brief description of what we'll be covering, but I think Danielle did mention this. We can go to the next slide. So I'd like to begin by giving everyone a brief definition of what a landscaping and lighting, or an LLMD, is. So LLMDs are funding mechanisms established by local governments in accordance with the 1972 Landscaping and Lighting Act, and they are formed to provide an enhanced level of landscaping and lighting services in a defined geographic area. The majority, if not all, of these services confer a special benefit to a specific community and are therefore paid for by that specific community. Any portion of the services that confers a general benefit to the public at large is funded by the city itself. So these districts are often formed at the request of a developer prior to or at the same time a specific community is being built to provide property owners with services that are above the standard level of service the city would normally provide in other public areas. While these LLMD assessments do appear on your property tax bill, they are not related to your property value or your standard 1% property tax, which actually goes towards other general countywide and citywide services like fire and police and library, etc. Next slide, please. I'll move into the history of each district. The Waterman Highlands District was formed in 1987 and was established to pay for landscape services only. So while LLMDs can pay for lighting and landscape, sometimes they're set up to only provide one type of service. The city has been and currently pays all lighting costs in this area. The district boundaries roughly encompass the area between 10 Gate Road, the Puda South Canal, Hillbourne Road, and Waterman Boulevard. In May 1996, the City Council approved the district to have a maximum assessment rate of $195 per parcel. There was no automatic inflator or built-in CPI increase approved at the time this maximum was approved. This CPI or built-in inflator could have been used to mitigate the effects of rising costs over time. Next slide, please. The Pepper Tree District is quite similar to the Waterman District in that it was also formed in 1987. It was also established to pay for landscape services only, so the city pays for lighting costs in this area as well. And the maximum assessment rate was also established in May of 1996 without a built-in inflator, except the maximum rate for this district is $60 per unit. The boundaries for this district roughly encompasses the interior streets off Pepper Tree Drive from Cement Hill Road. Next slide. Later in that same year, in November 1996, California passed Proposition 218, which is an amendment to the California Constitution that restricts local governments from establishing new or increasing existing assessment taxes and other fees that were still established prior to November 1996 without a property owner or ratepayer approval. So what this means in the case of the Waterman and Peppertree districts is that these districts are authorized to charge annual assessments anywhere from $0 all the way up to those max rates established in May of $195 for Waterman and $60 for Peppertree. But the city is required to conduct a Proposition 218 vote and get property owner approval before increasing beyond those maximum rates. And this actually brings us to the purpose of the town hall meeting tonight. So staff recently began a comprehensive review of all the city's 16 LLMDs for the purpose of determining the financial and operational viability of the districts. The Waterman and Peppertree districts were identified as requiring an increase in revenue in order to maintain services at the current level during the next couple fiscal years and beyond. These districts have really managed, along with some other districts that we have here, they're one of several that have managed to sustain services for about 30 years using just the annual assessments and any available reserves it may have from year to year without requiring an increase to those established maximum assessment rates. But we're really at a point right now where rising costs have exceeded the revenue we're authorized to collect each year. So it's time for the community to make some decisions as to the level of service they'd like to receive and the assessments they're willing to pay for the next 10, 20, 30 years, or however long these districts stay active. Next slide. I'll go over each district's budget projections and just give you a quick explanation of what you're seeing here in this chart. The first row shows the fiscal year, which our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th of each year. The second row shows the beginning fund balance or the reserve amount that was available to that district at the beginning of that fiscal year. We see the next two rows show the revenue and expenses that were in and out of that district for that fiscal year. And finally, the ending fund balance, which is the reserve amount remaining at the end of that fiscal year or on June 30th of that fiscal year. You'll see with current projections, the Waterman district is projected to deplete, pretty much deplete its reserved fund by fiscal year 23-24. You'll notice that the district will only have about $1,000 in reserves by the end of that fiscal year, which really isn't a sufficient operating reserve for any district. And you'll also notice that in order to keep that $1,000 in reserves and to make sure the fund doesn't go into the negative, the district actually had to reduce the budget by about 20% from the previous fiscal year. So from about $117,000 in expenses to about $95,000 in expenses. And yet again, the last column there in fiscal year 24-25, you'll see that there needs to be another about 40% reduction in that year as well, just to maintain that $1,000 in reserves. So when we were talking about reductions, we're actually referring to reductions that are compounding in nature. So not only is the budget for services decreasing just because we don't have enough assessment revenue to support the services, but also the quantity of services decreases due to general inflation over time. So for example, if in 2022, right now, your district receives weed abatement 4 times per month at a rate of $25 per service for a total of $100 per month, by the year 2025, those same weed abatement services may go up to $30 per service, which means for that same $100, your district can now only afford 3 services per month because that total is going to now be $90 instead of being able to support 4 services per month. Next slide, please. Likewise, the Peppertree district will also start seeing a decline. This is just a little bit later. They'll start seeing their decline in about 24-25. This district will make an initial reduction, 25% reduction to the budget during that year, and another estimated 35% reduction the following year, which is not shown here on this chart, in order to maintain that small $1,000 reserve and avoid a negative balance. Now, of course, these two scenarios that we've presented here represent what would happen if no action was taken to prevent these reductions. However, that is not the route the city is taking. Next slide, please. The solution for fiscal year 22-23 is shown here. In order to properly and comprehensively address the issues for both of these districts before we get to the point of reductions, as shown on those charts, the city must complete what we're referring to as a Proposition 218 process over the course of fiscal year 22-23. Now, this process that we're referring to is including two different things. The first is a community engagement process, and the second is a Proposition 218 analysis and balloting process. First, the community engagement efforts, I just want to stress that they are so crucial to this entire process, and they will be two-pronged. The first prong will include an educational approach to make sure that all property owners are aware of their district, they understand what services they're receiving, they understand the current situation that we're in. We want to make sure they have this piece first so that they make well-informed decisions at the ballot box. And then the second prong will include interactive tools and collaborative work groups, which will be available to all property owners in the district to make sure that everybody can be a part of the decision-making process. Because we really want these future services and assessment rates to be a reflection of what the entire community wants as a whole. The main purpose of this community engagement that we're talking about here is to determine what the services, each community would like to receive in the future. Oh, I think I'm sorry. Would you mind going to the next slide? Oh, sorry. If you could back up. Sorry about that. Thank you. So this could mean an increase or decrease in services, or it could just mean that the community wants to keep services as they are. And it's just a matter of us modernizing the assessment rates so that they fit what services actually cost in terms of 2022 dollars, as opposed to what they were projected to be back in the 1980s and 90s. So the results of the community engagement effort and what we hear from the property owners over this next year is really going to determine what the district looks like over, in the next few decades. So that second effort that the city will be undertaking in the next year is a Proposition 218 analysis and balloting. So the Proposition 218 requirements as mandated by the state are actually way more involved than just a simple balloting process. So it's more than just getting a ballot into your hands and tallying that up. You see, the Proposition 218 does not just require that property owners approve the new assessments or taxes, but it also stipulates that for any proposed increase to assessments and or taxes, local governments must prove and demonstrate the cost of each services or improvement that the district is providing. It must quantify the proportion of special benefit each parcel within the district is receiving from those services and improvements, and it must quantify the proportion of general benefit those services and improvements provide to the public at large, among several other things. Proposition 218 requires that the city prove and demonstrate all these facts in what is referred to as the engineer's report, which of course is prepared by a professional registered engineer. However, engineers can specialize in many different fields, and the city has hired our consultant NBS, who also specializes in community engagement, to do this engineering analysis for us because they do have a specific expertise in assessment engineering. Next slide, please. The entire process within community engagement and the Prop 218 balloting and engineering assessment work will take about a year to complete. This here is an approximate timeline of events, and as I won't go and read the entire slide here, I just wanted to point out that the bulk of the work, meaning the collaborative efforts and the engineering analysis, will be taking place between July 2022 and December 2022. With ballots being sent to property owners in April of 2023 and final rates being approved in June of 2023. Next, please. Ultimately, the goal of this whole process is to establish new rates and a new scope of services beginning July 1st, 2023. Now, I put a little asterisk there because I wanted to make sure that you knew that we would approve or we would establish those new assessment rates and new scope of services only if the community desired that. Next slide, please. Now we can talk about the costs of what this Prop 218 effort will be. The cost for all of this work is approximately $80,000 per district. Now, if you remember back from our budget slides, neither district at the moment has enough reserve balance to cover this work and to also continue providing landscape services at the current levels. So property owners from each district will have the opportunity to provide their input as to how the district moves forward in fiscal year 22-23, which is starting in about three weeks. It starts on July 1st. The first option property owners will have to consider is reducing landscaping services in order to cover the cost of the Prop 218 work. And the second option is to receive a loan from the city's general fund to cover the projected $28,000 shortfall. And this will allow us to maintain the current level of services that you're currently receiving right now and do the Prop 218 work. Next. If the first option is chosen, then your assessment rates will remain the same in 22-23. However, since these districts are relatively small in terms of the number of ratepayers, the total assessments collected each year and the services that it provides, each district will see a pretty dramatic reduction in services during the fiscal year. Waterman will see an overall about 40% reduction over the course of fiscal year 22-23, beginning in about September timeframe. And Peppertree, unfortunately, they are one of the smallest districts we have in terms of total assessments. They will actually not have enough assessment revenue to provide any services for the fiscal year beginning in September. Next. With option 2, each district could opt for a $28,000 loan from the general fund to be able to maintain the current level of landscape services and complete the Prop 218 work. If option 2 is selected, your assessment rates and landscaping services will remain the same in fiscal year 22-23 while we go through this Prop 218 process. Next. Council has agreed to issue the loans at 0% interest for a term of 5 years. The annual loan payment is about $23 per parcel in the Waterman district and a little under $12 per unit in the Peppertree district. Over the course of 5 years, property owners can expect to pay a total of about $116 in the Waterman district and about $60 in the Peppertree district. Next. Now, I mentioned a couple of slides back that property owners have 2 options at the moment to either reject or receive the general fund loan. Now, each of those 2 options have 2 potential outcomes. So in other words, there are 2 options available right now that can potentially lead to any one of these 4 outcomes. I'm going to take you through this chart. There is a lot on here, but that's exactly why we're going to be posting this on the CivicMic website. And you can also come back and refer to this recording. So I'm going to be reading this chart from left to right and go through each of the rows. So option 1, outcome 1. The option 1 is that the loan is not issued. So once property owners take the survey to voice their input on whether or not they would like to receive the loan, if the results of that survey is the property owners do not want to receive the loan, and we go through this next year and the Prop 218 process, and it's also determined that the property owners are not interested in increasing assessments or, receiving enhanced levels of service. The effect on services, if those actions are taken, is that the services will just be decreased, reduced to match whatever revenue is available, beginning in fiscal year 22-23 and beyond. In 22-23, you'll see that blue bubble there. You'll just pay whatever you're paying right now. So it's $195 in Waterman and $60 in Peppertree. And then beginning in 23-24 and really beyond, you'll just continue paying those current assessments. So that's option 1, outcome 1. The second row is option 1, outcome 2. In this option, again, the loan was not received by the district. However, after we went through the year-long Prop 218 process, property owners have decided, actually, I would like to increase my services, and I don't mind increasing my assessment a little bit to make sure I get to keep those services or even get enhanced services. The effect of services on those actions taken is that in fiscal year 22-23, the services will be reduced to match the revenue available because remember, we didn't receive the loan. But in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond, we'll start receiving those new and enhanced services, whatever it is the community voted for during this next year. You'll see in the last 2 columns what effect on rates, on your assessment rates it will have during fiscal year 22-23. So starting in about 3 weeks, you'll still pay the same current assessments that you're paying right now. However, in fiscal year 23-24, you'll start paying whatever the new assessments are that you voted for. Going on into the third row, which is option 2 and outcome 1. The loan is issued. So the results of the survey, probably that should have said outcome 3. Sorry, that was outcome 1 of option 2. Hopefully that didn't confuse anybody. But in this option, the loan is issued and new assessments are also approved over this next year. So what that means is the effect on services is that during fiscal year 22-23, you'll actually see no change to whatever you're seeing, whatever services you're receiving right now, because we're going to have that loan to be able to backfill the shortfall that we're projecting. And in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond, you will start seeing those new and enhanced services, whatever it is you vote for during this next year. So again, your 22-23 rates will be whatever you're paying right now. However, in 23-24 through fiscal year 27-28, you will be repaying the loan. So whatever that loan amount is, which is that $11 per year, and I think it was $20 per year or 15. Plus, you'll be paying the new assessments that you voted for. So it will be both the loan payment and the new assessments for that 5-year loan repayment term. After the 5-year loan repayment term, you'll just be paying the new assessments. Now, the last option, option 2 and outcome 2, this one is a little more tricky. So I would like to spend just a little more time on this one here. This option, these actions taken are if the loan is issued and we go through the year-long process and it turns out that the property owners are not interested in approving new assessments. So they say, you know, actually, I'm fine with just paying what I'm paying right now, and I'm fine also, you know, just reducing my services to match whatever revenues are available. If this option and outcome comes to pass, then in fiscal year 22-23, you will have no changes to your landscape services. You'll see the same thing you're seeing right now, because again, we'll have that loan to backfill the shortfall. However, in fiscal year 23-24 and beyond, we will begin to reduce the services over time to match whatever revenues are available, you know, in any given fiscal year. So again, your fiscal year 22-23 rates, you'll see the blue bubble. It's going to stay the current rates you're paying right now. However, starting in fiscal year 23-24, you'll still be paying the same amount you're paying right now. However, the assessments will be allocated to 2 different buckets. So you'll see right there, there's a little slice of pie getting taken out of that assessment rates. A portion of your assessment will go towards the loan payment, and a portion of your assessment the remaining portion will go towards actual services. Next slide, please. I don't mean to belabor this, but I know this one can be a little confusing. So I just wanted to make sure I give a little more explanation in an actual example so you can kind of see what the payment schedule would look like. The first half of the slide on top there, you'll see that's just a copy and paste of the last row from the previous slide. And in the bottom portion of this slide, you'll see an example. So the example of what option 2, outcome 2 could potentially look like is if your current assessment is $100 at the moment, and a loan is issued with a $25 annual payment for 5 years, beginning in fiscal year 23-24. And then we go through the year-long Prop 218 process, and it turns out that a new assessment is not approved. Then for fiscal year 21-22 and 22-23, I'm looking at the chart there to the bottom right. You'll see that your assessment will stay at $100, and all of that $100 is going towards the portion of it's going towards services. However, beginning in fiscal year 23-24, highlighted there in red, that's the beginning of the 5-year loan repayment term. So you'll still be paying the same $100 because again, we did not approve, or a new assessment was not approved. So you'll still be paying that same $100. However, it'll be apportioned in 2 different buckets. You'll see that only $75 of that $100 will actually go towards services, and $25 will go towards the loan payment. And it will be allocated that way for the 5-year repayment term. So you'll never pay more than what you're currently paying now if option 2, outcome 2 is selected. But if this outcome does come to pass, then you'll actually end up seeing an even greater reduction in services during this loan repayment period, because not only will less of your assessment be going towards services, but the cost of services are likely to increase, thus reducing your spending power. So if you remember that example I gave earlier about the weed abatement and how it was $25 per service in 2022, but perhaps in the year 2025, those same services are increased to $30 per each, weed abatement service. You can see how your spending power would be reduced on top of the actual revenue available for services being reduced during that repayment period. So this one can be a little tricky. So I know I spent a little bit of time on that, but I just wanted to make sure that this option was clear. Next slide, please. And that actually concludes my presentation. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to NBS to talk about how you can get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We'll have Michelle go ahead and speak about next steps and how to get involved. Michelle?
Thank you, Danielle. All right, so there are 3 main ways to get involved, and with different capacity and time commitments. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So the first one is to visit CivicMic.com/Fairfield. Yes, so if you go to the website, go ahead and go to the next slide. You can learn more. Be sure to select your district. We recommend you look through the website and read up on information on your district. If you sign up for updates or take the survey, we will keep you informed through your email and with any updates we have. We also recommend that you bookmark the page so you can find it easily. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The second step is to take the survey. Go ahead and go to the next slide. If you go to CivicMic.com/Fairfield, you should find your community and click the survey under that community. Please be sure to select only your community survey. This is the best way for the city to know what services your community wants and determine if your community would like a loan to temporarily continue the services. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And the third is to join the working group. This is a little bit more of a time investment. If you would like to join the working group, the goals are to provide community guidance through the entirety of this process, encourage community consensus and participation, to provide community input during the project and gather community feedback, and working openly and transparently with respect for all community members. If you would like to join the working group, you can select it on the survey, or you can email me at margaret@civicmic.com. And go ahead and go to the next slide. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, you could do it through CivicMic.com/Fairfield. You can call us at 1-800-676-7516 or email at margaret@civicmic.com or by mail at the address listed on the screen. I wanted to reiterate that the survey is very important. It is what the city will be using to recommend loan services to City Council. The survey will be closing on July 15th, so please be sure to give your opinion before then. Thank you.